Welcome to the Wild Hope Rising podcast. We're your hosts, Sunny Kane and Tammy Clotton, and we're so glad you stopped by. We want to help you be wildly you, and believe it or not, you're already her. We invite you to gather around the table with us. We'll help you move through your wilderness season, no matter how you got here. So lean in, let's ignite your purpose, and discover what you're made of. Buckle up, my friend. It's time for Wild Hope. Well, welcome back to the podcast, ladies. Tammy and I are so excited. We are huddled up with a special guest that we're going to introduce you to in a few minutes. But here we are. We are continuing in season 2 of Wild Hope Rising. Tammy, are you just so excited? We're having so much fun.
We are having fun, and I'm so grateful for all the people that we get to hang out with and chat with. So
Yeah, and speaking of that, I feel like weekly we continue to hear about the women who are sitting at this table. And we cannot express to you ladies enough what that means to us when we get to hear from you, because it's one thing sitting here in my shed, Tammy's office, looking at each other and having these conversations and imagining you. But when we know your name, that you're sitting here with us, whether you are driving in your car, or we heard from Sarah, who is pausing in the middle of her workday and she is listening at lunch. And she said that a friend told her about it. She didn't even know how to find a podcast, taught her how to use iTunes, schooled her on the phone, showed her how to download and follow us. And she said that we're her midday pick me up. And so, Sarah, thank you for listening. We're so glad you're sitting at this table. And we encourage you, ladies, would you please, please, please do the same? Go teach your friends how to listen to podcasts, spread the message of Wild Hope, because women need to know that they are not alone. And we are talking about the real stuff. We're pulling back the curtain, and you know us, we're not people who tie things up in a pretty red bow. We're people who want to get in the middle of the mess with you in those wilderness seasons where you feel held back. And we want to remind you that even there, wild hope can rise.
yes. And I think of Liz, who is listening as well. She learned how to do it on YouTube because she had not listened to podcasts before, but YouTube was familiar to her. So if that's more familiar to you, then go ahead and hang out with us there.
And as always, we love to tell you guys, and again, this is not about us. If you would take time, whether you listen on Spotify or you are on Apple Podcasts, would you take the time to rate and review us? Because we cannot express to you enough how this is how other women find us. It's the tricky little thing like the algorithm that finds us through keywords. When you are rating and reviewing, we get bumped up so people can find us. And so we so appreciate the time that you take in order to do that. So with that, we are so excited today to introduce our guest who's here for a Hope Huddle. Her name is Rhonda Velez, and I met her in a former season. I'm going to tell you all about that today, but she's a California native who now lives in Nashville. She's a wife of 28 years, a proud mom, an author. I mean, this woman is incredible. She's a multi-passionate entrepreneur who coaches women to stop striving for their worth and start living from it. With empathy, humor, and purpose, Rhonda brings hope and healing to everything she does. And I can affirm that this is true. Rhonda, we want to welcome you to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Tammy and Sunny. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm kind of laughing at the bio because it's like sometimes I don't feel like that person, right? Like, let's be honest, okay? We're gonna be honest here, right from the
Yep.
get-go.
Right.
It's
Yes.
funny. Before we even started today, we were talking about just those seasons where you walk through so much that they leave you feeling perpetually exhausted.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I told Tammy that I felt tired. My mom said she was tired of hearing me that I was tired. So like I'm trying not to be tired, but
Oh, Rhonda, we are so glad to have you here. It's a joy for me to meet you. I had never met you before, and so I'm so excited that you're here, and thank you so much for being here.
I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
So it's funny. I met Rhonda years ago. I went to something called Freedom Academy. And if you guys have never checked out Freedom Academy, Carrie Garcia, Tori Hine through Freedom Movement, there it's amazing. But I went there thinking I was going to get better at helping my ministry at the time, and I was going to get better at connecting with people. But really, we got to have an opportunity. I remember we were sitting across from each other. You and I got to hold each other's hands. And we've got to really sit and hold space for each other's stories. And so we kind of went into deep waters that weekend, even though we had just met. And my heart has been so endeared to you since.
Yeah. I feel so grateful because for that season in particular, I met such wonderful people that I've stayed in touch with for, well, what that was like 5 years ago, because that was in 2020. And, that 3 days literally changed my life. It actually catapulted me into the places that I have traveled the last 5 years in my life. And, even the journey to Tennessee from California, so much of that was birthed in that 3 days that we spent. So, yeah.
Mhm. That's
Very
beautiful.
cool. And Tammy and I, just so you get to know her a little bit, Tammy and I have been running around together for years. We did ministry, both pastors at a church for many, many years. And God has kind of linked us up to bring this message of wild hope to women because, like you, when you were saying you were perpetually exhausted, Tammy and I just kept running into each other and we both were like, huh, I mean, there's more. There's more.
Yeah.
And so thanks for sitting in our more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great way of putting it. Yes.
Oh, goodness. Well, just for women to get to know you a little bit and your heart before we really dive into this conversation, I know that something that is so near and dear to your heart, that is not necessarily the topic of our conversation, but it's who Rhonda is. You also founded the Tiana Project, which beautifully supports families walking through infant loss. And I know this is a meaningful part of your story. Before we dive in today, could you just share a glimpse of what that project means to you?
Yeah, so in 2002, my husband and I, we had a daughter. Her name was Tiana, and she died of a heart condition at birth. I was 37 weeks pregnant when she passed away. And it really changed us, not only as a couple, but each individually. We
Yeah.
both walked through these grief processes that were very different, right? Because men and women grieve very differently. And we created Tiana Project. And then with just really, I went through a crazy season where I had her and then was laid off my job 8 weeks later. It was just like one blow after another. And I would go to the cemetery every day and kind of just sit there. It was my grounding space. And I would see these parents that didn't have gravestones for their babies. And I would wonder why. Well, they're expensive and people couldn't afford them. And so I actually began making soaps out of my kitchen and selling them so that I could afford to purchase these gravestones for these babies. But what I found in the process too is that these women felt very alone and were walking this journey by themselves. They didn't feel, I think a lot of times when you have a child who is full term and passes away, people automatically kind of put that in the miscarriage bucket. It's very different. I mean, that is a very deep loss as well, miscarriage. But when you hold that baby in your arms and you have to plan for a funeral, it's just a different level of grief and it's very dismissed. And so, now years later, we are kind of revamping it and not, we are going to still go ahead and help those parents with gravestones and burial costs and those kinds of things. But we also want to walk alongside them in grief. And as my husband is healed, he's realized that there's not a space for men to grieve, that men are very dismissed in that area. And so we really want to be able to help these parents walk through this trauma and come out on the other side and really step back into their calling and purpose, because I feel like you lose yourself a lot when you're in that grief space.
Right.
So yeah, that's a little bit about what Tiana Project's like. We're excited. We just relaunched it here in Tennessee like 2 months ago. So we've got a
Oh,
lot of plans for what's going to happen next year, but we just, I don't know, we love people. We just love to help walk alongside people.
oh, Rhonda, that is beautiful.
You.
I am so sorry for your loss. And I know that that is only a short time ago. And so,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that with us and with our audience. And there are women in our audience that have walked through similar things as you. So to have you and your voice and your ministry here that they could reach out to, that's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that.
My hope is that no woman has to walk that alone. And I
Yeah,
know that it's very hard to talk about. So
you bet.
I want to just be that resource.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, what I love is, Rhonda, it really speaks to the heart of just who you are, that in the midst of life's painful seasons, you have found a way to see purpose in the midst of them. And while maybe not every woman can relate to what you have walked through,
Mhm.
we can have this common ground of, man, I have been through a painful season that I felt alone in and I didn't know how to get through. And I feel like right now, what I see in you is the living proof that God is faithful to bring us through and he can bring a purpose from the hardest of places. And so thanks for being a model of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not a fun model to be, right? Sometimes
No.
like,
No.
okay, God, like I really would have preferred the cushier life, right? Like, prefer the no problem life. I'm not sure that any
Right.
have that, but it is true. It's like, I was sitting down with my therapist not too long ago and I was fairly new to her and she's like, "So tell me a little bit about yourself." I start walking through my journey, my story, and some of the things that my husband and I have been through, and even what I had been through before him. And she goes, "Wow, that's a lot." And I was like, "Oh yeah, it kind of is." I'm surprised I'm surprised I'm still mentally sane, to be honest.
Right. Right. Ah.
And no wonder you feel tired,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm like, for the woman out there who's constantly tired, can we just say to you right now, we see you. We know what it's
Yeah.
like to have constant waves hitting the shores of your life. And friend, it's okay that you're tired. We're with you in that. So that kind of brings us to, Tammy and I always talk about wilderness seasons on Wild Hope Rising. And we really define these as seasons where people feel held back or fenced in, limited in some way. And they can be triggered by grief or life transitions, difficulties, internal, external resistance. But ultimately, these kind of seasons will leave people feeling stuck and disillusioned and sometimes disconnected from ourselves and others. So, Rhonda, we'd love to go there today. Have you ever been in a wilderness season of sorts? And what was that like for you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I feel like I've been in a wilderness season for the last 5 years, to be honest. My story about Tiana, that was a really hard, that was a hard part of my life, right? But there's been other parts in my story where I have been in wilderness seasons. Some of it I feel as I've been able to dig into a little bit of my own story, I realized that I'm a recovering perfectionist who performance is very much at the core of that. Growing up as a pastor's kid, I grew up to things had to look a certain way. You had to do things a certain way. I wasn't really allowed to be who I felt like God had created me to be. And not for any fault of my parents, but just the fact that that was the role I played. And so
Yeah.
when I walk through wilderness seasons, I found myself angry with God, disappointed in God. Like I've done all the right things, God. Like wasn't a teen mom. I didn't do drugs. I wasn't a heavy drinker. Like I checked all these boxes, God. So why am I in a wilderness season? Like this doesn't really seem fair to me. And that's when God really started to work on my heart. And I also feel like in 2002, when my daughter passed away, it was a moment for me to be like, I can no longer live on my parents' coattails as far as what I believe God is and who He is. I have to actually do this on my own. And I feel like that was the start of a season of understanding that I will have wilderness seasons. I might go through this, I'll get out of my 5 year crazy wilderness season and it'll be good for 2 years and then I might be back in another wilderness season. So how do we deal with that and how do we pop out of those things quicker than I mean before I would sit in my sadness for days and days and days. And as I begin to heal, I know the things that are triggering me. I know where the enemy comes after me. And I'm able to, like, okay, I see it. I know what truth is and I know what the lies are. And so I think it's really about when you go through the wilderness seasons, like, how do you get out of those wilderness seasons, even when you're stuck in the middle of them? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And is it about escaping the wilderness seasons, really?
Right.
Because
Right.
we think that in our culture today, it's like we do not want to deal with suffering. We do not want to stay in a wilderness season because that means something about us or it means something about God. When in fact, we see from the beginning of the Bible to the end that there's lots of wilderness seasons.
Oh, yeah.
People are living in them and through them. And so I wonder if it's less about escaping and learning how to learn lessons and be curious and all of that. What do you think, Rhonda?
Yeah, no, I definitely think. And when I say like pop out of it, I mean, for me, when I would go through a wilderness season, I would get very sad and depressed. And there would be days that maybe I would stay in bed, or days that I would be really angry at God, or days that I was really bitter. Um, and the more I've healed, the more I've been able to actually sit with those feelings and actually
Yeah.
name them, and then be able to say, all right, we're in it. We're in the middle of it, but that's okay. We're going to be okay.
Mhm.
And it doesn't take me quite as long to,
Mhm.
process those emotions because,
Yeah.
I mean, as much as we want to be done with the wilderness season, it's like you just have to walk through it. Like there's just no way around it. It's like when you're driving in the middle of the desert before you get to Las Vegas. You've got to go there,
Right,
right? Like
right.
there's no special click your heels twice and you're in the middle of,
Right.
Vegas, which is the cool part, but you got to go through that desert. And so
Yeah.
I think the more you start to look inward and ask the Lord, hey, where are these places in my heart that I haven't trusted you, or maybe places of harm that I've been hurt, or I feel like these feelings keep coming up again. When we start to ask those questions and get curious, I think that is really where God meets us. And,
Mhm.
you
That
know,
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, we start to learn that he's not just God on the throne, but he's actually God walking with us. And that was something I had to learn too. So,
It's funny when you were talking about, just being that whole perfection and performance can kind of drive you. And I kind of heard this piece in you of that there was this driver of, but I've done everything right. I didn't do A, B, C, D. And it's interesting because when I was in some wilderness seasons, instead of being the person who is saying, I did everything right, I've been there too in those kind of wilderness. But I've also been here in the wilderness seasons where I'm like, but I am the person who did the heavy drinking. And I am the person who screwed this up. And I am the person who, insert whatever season of my life, the thing that I didn't do right. And I also know that that brings such a level of, um, it's like the thing that's driving that is, of course, I'm
right, this
sitting
is
in the
why it's
wilderness. This is my fault.
happening.
And yet it can lead to the same common ground. That is so funny to me of performance. I'm going to perform my way out. So while we might be holding different mentalities in it,
100.
man, some of the output of what we do is still so much the same. That's what was happening in my mind when you were talking.
Well, and I think too, like with me, I mean, when I know that I've done something that hasn't been right, then I blame myself for that as well. And so it's like I don't win either way
Right.
because I can be perfect or I can be imperfect in either way. I've had to learn too when I've had moments of blow up or I've, just gone off or had a bad day or whatever. I'll just be real honest with you guys. A couple weeks ago, I had a client and it was just a mess after a mess after a mess. And I was in my office and I was not saying Christian words. I'm just going to let you know. And they were coming out multiple times.
I love Jesus, but I cuss a little.
Yes, yes. And it was not a little that day. And I was just, going at it. And I was in my office by myself, but my daughter and her friend were upstairs and they could hear it. It was echoing. And the girl told my daughter, I didn't realize your mom cussed so much. And I immediately felt this shame and then also this anger inside me like, I'm human. Like, just because I wrote a book and I love Jesus and I, am on the worship team and I love to pray and do all the right things, I still had a really bad day. And so, that when you talk about that, oh man, I really screwed up. And then, you do start to think, well, maybe this is why God is taking me through this, because I
Mm.
can't control my anger or I can't control my temper. But when I sit back with it, I'm like, God also knows I'm really human. And I had about had it that day. Like,
Yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
I felt bad about it after, but I think sometimes we want to, I don't know, what's the word for it? We want to perform our way into or out of the wilderness. Like, okay, I'm gonna do all these things so that I can get to the other side.
And sometimes we do all of the things with a heart that isn't attached to them. So, like, I will be the woman who I will never cuss, but on
Yeah.
the inside, I am like, I'm cussing. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm about to blow. But so the truth is that, we can fool ourselves in that it's like we're masquerading now. And now we feel like, and so for the woman out there who might be listening to this, what I want to say to you is Rhonda's giving us permission to be human here in
Yes.
the even if whether you are a Jesus following chick or whether you are somebody who just really prides himself on being a person who has goodness that is flowing from them, when you have a moment where you go off the rails and you cuss and you could just for a minute give yourself a little bit of grace and just say, inhale, exhale, like, I'm a human.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next? Right? Because
Yeah.
we all go there. So thank you for just being honest and letting us hear that very honest moment. We all do that. I mean, I
Yeah.
do it. And I've heard
Yeah.
Tammy cuss too. I'm not trying to throw her stuff on.
It's not like, it is funny because my mom, the pastor's wife, actually bought me a dish towel that says, I love Jesus, but I cuss a little. And I'm like, Mom, really? Like, that's really good. She must know me way too well. But, it's true. It's like, I feel like sometimes we feel we have to fit in this certain little box, especially I think if you've grown up in church or you've been in a place where they're telling you like, oh, Jesus hates that grieves. And yeah, it probably does grieve Jesus's heart when I'm that angry. But I also think he understands. I also think he's like, girls had a really hard few months, 5 months. I mean, I'm going to give her a little grace for this. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Rhonda, you and I have something in common. I am a PK as well. I grew up in the church my whole life. One of the things I keep thinking of, ladies, is um, not only do we blame ourselves sometimes, not only do we have that, but I did everything right, but a lot of times we'll turn and blame others
Mm,
yeah,
for,
yeah,
whatever is going on in our life because we're always looking for someone to blame,
yeah.
whether it's myself, whether it's another person, whether it's God, right? Because
Mhm.
we want the escape. And so if we have someone to blame, we can do something about it, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think a lot of times it's easy to blame other people for the things that you are going through. Sometimes it's just life, and sometimes it's
Right.
God trying to refine you. And I know that you talk a lot about hope in your, podcasts. And I've had moments where I lose hope because I have had so many things that have come against me that I don't want to hope. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, for
scared to
sure.
hope again. And so I think sometimes in certain seasons, I'm like, you know what? I'm not even get my hopes up because
Yep.
I'm pretty sure God's going to say no to me on
Yep.
this. I'm pretty
Yep.
sure he's gonna just tell me no. In fact, the very last entry in my book is called Sometimes God Says Yes.
Oh,
And it's funny because I got all the way through it. It was literally like probably going to go to press within a couple days. And I told my publisher, is there any way I can add in one last entry? And she goes, yeah, if you get it in today, you can. And it's not even, it's day 31 and it's like, surprise, God says yes. Um, and yet I'm like, man, I wrote it. And sometimes I'm like, why do I not believe it? Why do I
mm.
not believe that sometimes God can say yes?
Yeah, and I want to dig even more there in a few minutes. And just you shared some words with me via a voice text not too long ago about hope that I was like, oh my goodness, I want people to hear this. But we do want to talk about it. Rhonda has a beautiful book, When God Says No, Eat Cake. And it's about finding comfort in God despite the setbacks in life. And the name is just so much fun. But I would love for you, could you give us a little backstory?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. My oldest daughter, had been going through a really, really tough season. And my mom and my daughter's best friend and I had decided, well, we're going to just fast and pray and see what God has for us. So each of us were fasting different things at the time. But I mean, I want to say it went on for a few months. And it was right around my daughter's birthday. Her friend, who is amazing, we were just sitting around the table talking, and I was like, I'm just tired of praying. I'm tired of fasting. It just seems like everything that I asked God for, we would pray for something, there would be the situation, and then it would come back with no resolution. And I was just, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. So she just sat and she goes, maybe, maybe we're done fasting. maybe it's just time to eat cake. And I was like, oh, I love that. And then we started laughing about it. And she's like, that's going to be your next devotional. When God says no, eat cake. So I have to give a shout out
That's
to my
awesome.
daughter's friend, Stephanie, who really came up with that title. But the more I think about it, you know, we were talking, Tammy, earlier before we got on this, that sometimes you eat cake and you're happy, and sometimes you eat cake and you're sad, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so I think it's really our posture, our heart posture, when it is a no. But I will say that's not easy because, again, when you've walked through so many no's, you begin to think everything is a no from God. And that, oh, well, his ways are better than our ways. And yeah, all that, yes, it's so true. His ways are better than our ways. But it sucks to get a no. You want what you want, and you want the desires of your heart, and then you wonder why God isn't giving you those desires. So
Yeah.
Especially if those desires, they feel like they're good, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you go, these desires are godly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that that's just, I mean, I think it was day 23 that I actually talked, I'm looking at it now, that I talked about that story. And the verse I used was, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. And again, that's Isaiah 55:8 and 9. His thoughts are greater than ours. And in that season, in particular, that situation, I look back at it now and I'm like, oh my gosh, what God restored out of
Mm.
that season
Mm.
is incredible. I look back and I think, I cannot believe that what I was praying for was not God's best for
Mm.
my daughter. It really
Yeah.
wasn't. And now I look at her and the place that she's in, and I think, man, Lord, you are so good. And those are the reminders that I have to remind myself when I'm walking through the wilderness and
Yeah.
walking, like, what has God done in the goodness that he has? And sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. I mean, my daughter
Yeah.
passing away was awful. It was awful.
Right. Right.
That is, there's never going to be a time where I go, God, I wish that would have been a different answer. I wish that would
Right.
have been a different answer from God.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the impact that my daughter's brief life has had on other people, I can't wait to get to heaven to see what impact a baby made on
Mm.
people and
Yeah.
people that were in heaven.
Right.
It's like a cake, and I hear the cake twist. My mind
Yeah,
keeps going there. It's like a plot twist, but it's like a
yeah,
cake
cake.
twist. Like God can, he does it. And, I mean, let's face it, we all love cake.
Yes.
I think we do.
Rhonda,
Yeah.
in honor of you, and this whole idea of sometimes we just need to stop and have cake, right? Sometimes it's for a celebration, sometimes it's to mark a moment. And it was beautiful how your daughter's friend said, "Hey, let's be done."
Yeah.
And we brought a cake for you.
No,
We know the audience can't see it currently,
not gold
but
on the top of it,
it
which is
does.
has to have sparkles.
But what
But we
kind of
wish it
cake
could
is
be.
it?
It's chocolate.
Oh, it's
Oh,
chocolate.
So just
It's
in
good.
case, yeah.
in case we need to
Um,
eat the cake right now.
yes, yes.
Okay, so if you were going to
Martha.
choose in this moment, like if you could pick your cake flavor, let's just go there. What cake are you ordering today?
Oh, I like lemon cake with lemon frosting.
Oh, I
Oh
love lemon cake.
yeah.
Because there's
That's the
something that's like sweet, but it's not too sweet, and you can like
yeah.
eat a lot of it.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah. What
Yeah.
about you, Tammy?
I am a lemon person as well. So I absolutely love and that light little mousse type
Yeah.
separation in between layers. Oh,
Mhm.
yes.
And I love coconut cream.
I do
Oh,
too. Ooh,
Oh my goodness.
I like coconut cream.
okay.
Although I
And
don't request that, but I'm like, yeah, I do like coconut
I
cream.
do. And they have like my friend once gave me this recipe for these coconut cream cupcakes, and I never made them because I knew when I was at her house at her daughter's graduation party, I'm not really like a overeater type person. Like that's not, my vice of choice. It's other things. But I remember at that graduation party that I ate 3 of them because they were so good. And so I don't make them in my home because I know I will eat the entire pan and not share them with anybody. So,
And I'm not a super sweet person either. Like you could, if you said, Rhonda, do you want sweet or do you want salty? I would take popcorn any day. I eat popcorn, you guys, like almost every day.
Okay.
I
me
my husband
too.
bought, my husband bought me a $300 popcorn maker for my birthday.
Okay, I'm
Awesome.
coming to Nashville
Awesome.
for cake and
Big
popcorn.
popcorn. I know. And it is the best popcorn maker. And everyone's like, your husband paid $300. It is the best. It's like ceramic. It's amazing. It's the best popcorn maker ever. But yes, I
Yeah.
am the queen of
I
popcorn.
didn't
I'm
I didn't
actually
even
an
oh,
ice
go
cream
ahead.
person, so ice
Um,
cream.
yeah, I do
Yep,
like.
that's
So we got
my
ice
jam.
cream, popcorn, cake.
Okay,
Ladies,
live
it is
on
going
that.
to be a great party. And for those of you who are listening, we would love for you to enter this conversation too. Please go on social media, share this podcast. Otherwise, people, or at least tag us and tell us the kind of cake you like or shoot us a
Right.
message. We want to know what kind of
Yeah.
cake do you have in case we ever get to have a live meetup. We got to know what kind of cake to bring you
Right.
ladies. So
Right.
Do a live podcast recording and we'll have popcorn and cake. Yeah.
Right.
I love it. And we'll have you back. It's going to be so great. But,
Yes.
it's funny. Yesterday, when Tammy and I were talking about this conversation with you, we were just talking about cake and the symbolism of cake and how, people bring it to parties. And it's funny if you just do an AI, search on it, it talks about how in some cultures it's a way of giving an offering to their God. In others, it's like, there's so much around it. But Tammy was talking about the idea of community with cake. And you want to share that story, Tammy, of just
Yeah.
coming with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So the whole idea, I sometimes have hard things happen, and I don't always invite other people into that. I'm a person who tends to, process some things on my own and all of that kind of thing. Well, this friend of mine and I, we used to go and grab a pint of ice cream, and we would sit in the car and share this ice cream while we processed hard things that we were walking through in a wilderness. And so when I thought of the eating cake, I was
Yeah,
like, when was the last time you said, hey, I'm going to have some cupcakes, some cake, some ice cream? I really have some hard things that I need to share and invite someone into your story
that's
as you're
so
doing that. And it's not just to medicate, although it does taste good, right?
right.
But it is that way that kind of breaks some ice and invites someone else in and marks a moment that
Mhm.
is significant. I can remember some of them right now sitting in a car, in
Right.
the topic that we talked about because we shared that. And so I love the title of your book and how we can have those moments of just eating cake together in the middle of a wilderness.
Well, and when you think about the story of Elijah, remember he was tired
Yeah.
and he went to hide.
Yep.
And what did God give him?
Yep. Yep.
Cake.
Yep.
And it's just like God is still saying yes to you by giving you that comfort, food. He's like, here, rest, rest. And I think as a person who's performance driven, rest is not something I do well. And so even in this it's funny, I just had this epiphany. In this last 5 months, that's been a challenge that God has given me. And I'm like, okay, we were talking about, I write this book, don't ever write a book on no's because then you'll just walk through a whole season of no's. But maybe in this season for me, God is saying, I need you to rest, trust me, and just eat cake. And it's okay. Like I'm gonna just be here with you in this season of wilderness.
Yeah. I got you.
Mhm.
Yeah. And let's take off the pressure, ladies who are listening. Like, I would love that, but I can't eat cake. I couldn't do that. People get so nutty about cake, but have a nut cake, friend,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, yes, we're going to go through seasons where what we are walking through is going to impact us physically. Can we just normalize that? Like the gaining of 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever pounds, that happens in hard seasons. And how about if we view that as sometimes what is happening is your body's giving itself a damn hug? Oh,
Yeah.
now we're going to have explicit lyrics. Dang it. I love Jesus and I cussed a little. Shoot. Anyways, but
Not
you know
even
what
you,
I
not
mean?
me.
So do not fear the cake. Look
Yeah.
at what it symbolizes. But we're getting closer to the end of our time here. And I really want you to talk about hope because when I reached out to you to ask you to be on here in your voice text, you said, I have been in a season with so many letdowns that I just stopped hoping. You said, I know God is good and his ways are better, but you got to a place where you said, I'm not going to hope for the best anymore. I'm just going to settle with this and I'm just going to go with he's probably not going to answer this prayer. So I'm just going to learn to be okay with it. And you talked a little bit about cynicism and hope and how you were walking through that. So can you kind of let the ladies in to that piece of this?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I'll try and say this without crying because I still feel like I'm struggling with it every day to believe that God does have the best ahead for me. But I think sometimes life takes us down. And I do believe that the enemy comes in and says, see, why do you trust him? Why? Right? That's part of my story is like I haven't always trusted Jesus. I thought I did. I was a good Christian girl. I did all things right, but I don't know that I really truly trusted that God was good. And so I think it's part of my story. God has challenged me into trusting him in my hope, whether I hope and it happens or I hope and it doesn't happen, being able to say, okay, God, you really do have the best for me. And that is a really hard place to be because I don't want to be cynical. I don't want to be like, well, I'm not going to even bother trusting him. Um, some of that comes from my own story. I mean, maybe that's where you're sitting today. You're like, I know that I've gone through so many series of letdowns that like, why bother even asking God for the desires of my heart? But I think what I would say to your audiences today is that God does want to give you the desires of your heart. And sometimes our desires of our heart aren't aligned with his best. And
Yeah.
that is a hard thing to swallow, right? I can use my
Yeah.
daughter as the example in that season when I was fasting and I was praying and I was like, God, but you don't want this. I know you want this for her. And I thought I knew what was best, but my heavenly Father was like, mm, I just want you to know that that's not the best. What I have for her is so much greater. And I think in this season, I keep going back to that story because it reminds me of, okay, God, if you're saying no, that means that there is something greater on the other side, even if I can't see it right now.
How would you encourage somebody if they're walking with cynicism right now? How do you think that they can combat that?
I think I mean, this is just a tool that I've used is really just, I journal a lot, but just really going back and remembering. You were saying, Tammy, I remember sitting in the car with the ice cream. It's like those remembrance stones, right? Like that God had put those stones and they were remembrance. And remembering the things that God has done. And I know that it might be something so minute. I mean, maybe it was you got a promotion and it came out of the blue. You were talking, Sunny, about how it was suddenlies, right? Because I feel like that's how sometimes God works. Like even with the last chapter of my book, where sometimes God says yes, it's those suddenlies. And all of a sudden we're like, wait, sometimes we don't even acknowledge it because it happens so quickly, we kind of bypass it because we
Yeah.
don't know. We're like, oh, yeah, that was great. I got the promotion. That was great. I got a little raise, whatever it might be. And you bypass it and you forget that, hey, he was right there. But we're
Yeah.
sitting over here in cynicism, like, he never does anything for me. He hates me. He never opens doors. And then we forgot about the 5 things he did over here that were suddenlies.
Mm. So journaling, and then I'm hearing gratitude as well,
Yeah, I
like
think
stopping
gratitude.
and pausing and yeah.
Yeah, I think I every day have 3 little statements that I write down in my journal. And one of them is I am. They're the I am statements, which I think are so important. And those are who not only I think I am, but who God thinks I am and what he's called me to. And it's the other one is I have, and the other one is I will.
Oh,
And those 3 things. And I just, sometimes the grateful that I have is that I just have a warm cup of coffee this morning. I think we get so caught up on oh, I have a beautiful family. Like it's something grand you've got to be grateful for. Maybe it's just like, I'm grateful for just sitting down with Sunny and Tammy today, something really small that you can just see a little bit of light of day when you're in the
mm,
wilderness, a little bit
right.
of over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I am, I have,
And I
I
will.
will. And what a great practical tool for women to use, because I do think that when we have found ourselves in those seasons like you have, 5 years of difficulty, let alone that there was difficulty before that, because
Yeah.
life is lifey, right? Ugh.
Yeah.
But what can happen is we become so accustomed to the negative space in our head and in the sadness and the grief and the pain and the suffering for some women and the when's it going to turn, that when it does turn, our brain and our mindset, and there is science here too. Listen, I am not a trauma therapist, nor will I proclaim to be, but I promise you, you could Google what I'm talking about and figure this out yourself. But our brains are hardwired for comfort zone. And our comfort zone is not always what is best for us. Our comfort zone can be, oh, my comfort zone, I am so used to talking negative about my circumstance that even though it's turned, I'm still talking negative about my circumstance because my brain goes, this is what we do. This is what's comfortable. And so tricking it with things like what Rhonda is talking about is a helpful reset. I can, I have, I will. And unfortunately, we want to romanticize this, that it just will naturally, everything got better and it tied up in a pretty red
Manifest
bow.
yourself. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just felt grateful. And that's just not how it is. You have to train your brain to lift your language so that you can see the beauty that is directly before you. So thank you for that tool, Rhonda.
Mhm.
And when you're talking, just real quick, when you're talking about the brain, it's that even when in my own story, there was a place when I was in fifth grade that something happened. And so my brain doesn't know the difference between fifth grade Rhonda and Rhonda, who is, in her 50s now. And so it immediately wants to go there. So to be able to rewire your brain to understand, it's this little tiny piece of your brain called the amygdala that's so tiny, right? But it stores all those negative things. So if you don't rewire it, you'll keep repeating the same cycles over and over and over again. And that's not
Yeah.
easy. I mean, even with as much training as I've done in, trauma informed coaching, I still get stuck a
Yeah.
lot, but I think these are little tools that have helped me go, okay, we're going to reset. We're going to clear the slate. Let's reset. We're going to write these things down so that we remember them.
And
Yeah.
what you just said, in the fifth grade Rhonda, bringing her to like, I would love to even keep talking that because I think you, me, and Tammy could have a great conversation. What I'll say to a woman who just heard that and went, wait, oh, what's that about? Like, wait a minute, that's where I'm at right now. I just want to encourage you, if you go back to our podcast and you can find Adam Young's episode that we just did a few weeks ago, I would encourage you because this is what he's talking about when he says, make sense of your story. And he's talking about this, what Rhonda just brought up, and that will help you deep dive there because we can't go there today and we want to.
And,
So,
and by the way, and Adam Young, like his book is amazing. I read it and listened to it on Audible because, again, I need the reminders of making sense of your story. And so, yeah, I
mhm.
do encourage women to really kind of dig into that piece of their life to if they keep repeating cycles, because I feel like, you can just go round and round and round.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have one last question for you, but ladies, I want you to know you can pick up Rhonda's book, When God Says No, Eat Cake, on Amazon today. And I encourage you to do so. It's a devotional, right? Where
Yeah,
they
it's
can
a
walk
super
through.
simple read. Yeah, super simple read. It gives you some prompting questions so that maybe you can start entering a little bit into your story and figuring out where some of those broken places are.
And also, because we want to be women of gratitude, I would just say, also, ladies, if you can honor Rhonda's story and what she has shared today and the work that God is pouring through her life, we would love for you to give her a shout out on social media, wherever you are. Tag her if you've heard this. If she blessed your life in some way, if something that she said spoke to you, go onto your Instagram, pop it up there, share the
Yeah.
Wild Hope Rising podcast, and tag Rhonda. And where can they find you on social media?
So on Instagram, I'm actually at Reality of Life. And then I'm also on LinkedIn under Rhonda Velez, and Facebook, also Rhonda Velez. And then I also have a podcast called Qualified for More. So I have that as well that you can listen to. And you can find me on Instagram, Qualified for More podcast.
Awesome. So all of those places, in case you heard them and you're driving, you couldn't write them down, no problem, friend. We've got you covered in our show notes. Please go look there. We will have all things Rhonda linked there. But Rhonda, in closing today, part of what we love to do is help women in wilderness seasons move into the wide open, spacious life. And we have seen that sometimes wide open, spacious life can happen right in the middle of the wilderness. But as you personally imagine stepping out of the wilderness, out of all that holds us back and into this wide open, spacious life we were created for, can you paint a picture for us? What do you feel like that wide open, spacious life looks like? And what might it feel like to be that wildly free?
Oh gosh, it feels like not limiting our beliefs of who God created us to be and getting rid of those talk tracks that continue to keep us back from what God's called us to. Because I think so often we're like, well, she does that, or she does this, or how can I be a podcaster or an author or whatever? I don't have anything to share. And I just want to say that is not true. When you said wide open spaces, all I could think was like a big field with those really pretty yellow flowers and just being able to run and in circles and,
Oh,
just with maybe even rain falling on you, just in a circle, just free, like, hey, this is who I am, unashamed who I am. Take it or leave it. It's okay. I've got stuff to bring to the table and stuff to say.
Mm, that's beautiful. Yes, we have similar pictures in our heads. So,
and I'm like
Yeah.
frolicking through the field of yellow flowers while we all eat cake.
Thank you. Well, I will tell you before we end here, a couple weeks ago, I told myself in my head, because like I said, it's been a hard season, that next time it rained, because it rains a lot here in the South, but next time it rained and there wasn't lightning in the air, I would go outside and twirl in the rain. And so one night it started raining, and my husband's like, "What are you doing?" And I literally got up, we were watching TV, and I was like, "I'm going to go run in the rain." And so I did. And he took a video, and I look back at it and I think, I was having so much fun.
yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful. Yes.
Wide open, spacious life. I'm singing in the rain.
Yes. Go run in the rain, ladies. Go run in the rain.
Well, and I
Uh,
love that you kept that promise to yourself too,
Yeah.
because it's those things and grasping a hold of those things that help us in these
Mhm.
hard seasons, right? It's like, nope, the next time I'm going to do this. The next time I'm going to do that. Yeah,
Instead of being like,
beautiful.
oh, I don't want to mess my makeup
Right,
up.
right,
I don't want to get my clothes wet. Like I was like,
right,
I don't care. It doesn't matter.
right. That's beautiful.
well, ladies, today we're singing in the rain. We
Yes.
are frolicking through fields. We are eating cake. We are the wilderness women. And friend, we want to encourage you. You're going to make it through that wilderness. We're with you here. So buckle up. It's time for wild hope. And thanks for being with us today, Rhonda Velez. My prayer is freedom will become your story and redemption your song. Now it's time to take hope-filled action. And if today's episode spoke to you, please don't keep it to yourself. Like, subscribe, and share, and help us grow this community. Thanks for listening to Wild Hope Rising. Until next time, keep stepping boldly into the spacious life you were created for.